My name's John Page. Very proud to be invited, and thank you very much. My purpose in coming today is to get every one of you to get involved in Hope Not Hate and our campaign against extremism and racism and the politics of division. But I've got a little task to do before I can persuade you of that, because as has already been said, there have been many of you who are already working night and day to keep your union branch afloat and to cover for some of the weaknesses and stretching yourself to the limit. So I want to give you a little bit of an example of how working with communities can actually strengthen your union branches. And I used to be a UNISON branch secretary back in the day in Hackney, which is where I live. And in 2000, Hackney Council went into crisis. Very much the sort of crisis we just described that will be happening in FE in the coming months. And the council decided that they would slash library services, they would slash home care services, and they would close nurseries, and they would cut our members' wages by £1,500. This was the lowest paid workers in the council. Now, we already had a bit of an approach towards the community, but one of the things that happened was that the nursery, there was a Friends of Hackney Nurseries group. It's predominantly, by the way, a Haredi Jewish organisation, because just for very historic reasons, it was a part of the community that was very concerned about nurseries. They were barred from meeting on council premises anymore, and one of their supporters came and asked if they could meet on the union branch premises, and I said, yeah, that's fine. At the time we were balloting for industrial action, I was invited in just to speak to them to share our concerns about nursery closures and so on. At the time, the local anarchists were going to organise cycling around Old Street Roundabout to cause disruption on the day we were going to have a strike. So we decided we were going to have a day of action in which the UNISON branch was contributing a day's strike, and various different parts of the community would contribute whatever they contributed, including two of the nurseries went into occupation. Anyway, I was speaking to this group, and this young woman, a Haredi woman, very socially conservative in background, said, well, what can we do to help? And I just said some of the things happening. She said, well, maybe we'll get the kids out of the nurseries and we'll box off Stamford Hill, which is a major intersection in the north of the borough. So, oh, that sounds like a great idea. I didn't expect anything to happen. On the day that we actually took the strike action, the council had assumed we'd have a minority of our members out on strike, there'd be a few paper sellers outside the town hall, and it would all be over. We ended up with 1,000 people outside the town hall. We had enormous support from the community, and it turned out that, in fact, this socially conservative group in the north of the borough had actually closed and occupied the streets to show their support. The impact of all this on our members was electric. People didn't think, well, we had a one-day token strike, now we'll have to put up with it. And we went on and we actually prevented any library closures. We saved one of the nurseries, although we lost one of the others. And none of our members lost that £1,500. So it was a real achievement, which we could not have achieved without that community support. I just want to talk about a couple of other examples. About 6 years ago, the BNP wanted to advertise in the Hackney Gazette. They were going to advertise in every local paper in London. We were told about this on the Thursday, and the Gazette goes to print on the Wednesday. So we had a meeting, an emergency meeting of Hackney Trades Council, and there was all sorts of suggestions. Let's have a petition. Let's approach the NUJ and see if they'll call a strike. Let's try and see if the printers will call a strike. Why don't we just have some pickets and picket the offices? We looked at all these, well, none of these are going to work. Not in 4 or 5 days, which is all the time we've had. And we sat down, we did something called power mapping. So who has got the power in this situation? And somebody said, well, what about the newsagents? The vast majority of newsagents in Hackney are from ethnic minorities. They don't want to see the BNP organising in the borough. So what we did is we produced a fact sheet, and we emailed the facts. Do you remember what faxes are? You know, the machine that produced this. And we sent it out by email to all of our supporters on the Trades Council list, and all of our community supporters. And we asked people to do one thing. Take a copy of this fact sheet into your newsagent, who you already have a relationship with because you buy their paper there every day, and tell them about what's proposed, and ask them to fax this over to the Hackney Gazette. And what it said on there was very simple. I sell your papers every week. If you run that advert, do not bring your Hackney Gazette to my shop. I'm cancelling the order. 200 newsagents faxed that over. The advert didn't run. That is an example. That's an example of what can be done. And it couldn't have been done just by the trade unionists alone. I'll just give you one more example before I move on to just a final comment. I looked at the TSSA. When this current government came in, we had 13 years of a Labour government with a paper commitment to bringing railways back into public ownership. It didn't happen, you may have noticed. At that point in time, the idea of railways coming back into public ownership was dead. Nobody was talking about it. We sat down as a union and said we need to do something about this. And we knew that rail passengers were being ripped off by the privatisation of rail. Vast millions of pounds going into private sector shareholders' pockets. Services being cut monthly. And we organised with rail passengers around things like fare rises. And actually we got to the situation where 18 months ago, the Daily Telegraph was running articles about why railways should be bought back into public ownership. That was possible because actually nobody was going to listen to a rail union talking about it, but when commuters, many of them living in marginal seats, started shouting it out, it suddenly became an issue. So again, another example. But I want to finish on one point because, you know, I'm trying to persuade you to get involved in Hope I want you to get involved in communities. I want your branches to get involved in working with your communities. But then, you know, as I said at the beginning, you might think, well, you know, we're already doing so much. Being involved in communities can transform your branches. And I'll give you an example. On Thursday evening, I was out. It wasn't a UNISON branch, I'll say that much. But it was a branch meeting. And I was out with a young, she's a young Sikh organiser for Hope Not Hate. She's 22 years old, fresh out of college, she's brilliant. We turned up this union branch, it was probably the first branch meeting of a trade union branch you'd ever been to, and it was hell. Right? The meeting started 20 minutes after it was due to start. Nobody seemed concerned about that. The first 40 minutes when it had started were bureaucratic rubbish. I can't even remember. I know that they agreed to do 3 different things, support 3 different campaigns, but never actually decided what they needed to do to do it. The energy in the room was dead. And then we started talking about Hope and Hate. We were invited to speak. And what she did is she got people to sit around in small groups to talk about how to do voter registration in their area. And who do they know? Which community leaders are there that they can approach among them? And suddenly, the room was buzzing with energy. People who, I thought it was like an episode of Zombies, right? It was dead. And suddenly, when you gave people the opportunity to think about how they could practically do something that would make a difference, people came alive. People enjoyed it, and they're actually planning voter registration. They're going to be engaging with the local Gurdwara, the local church, and so on. And that meeting was transformed by the idea of engaging with the community. So I hope many of you will be coming to workshops, looking forward to that. I hope all of you will think about how you can work with communities, and it will reinvigorate the branches.